Knife sharpening. I got a knife returned to me. This is, I can tell from the sheath, it's a very early knife. I've got a feeling I made this one. I think it's one of my sort of what I would call a learning knife, really. It was when I used to do the logo, which was electro etched. You can very faintly see it on the right hand side of the blade, but these days I always stamp on the left hand side of the blade now, using a hydraulic press, which gives a much deeper and crisper and just, well, better all round logo. So this is a very early knife, and as I say, one that I would call one of my learning knives, and it's the person that's had it has sort of looked after it, and you can tell they've tried to polish it up and that. There's still marks on the blade from where I can see that I hadn't learnt how to hand finish things properly. Well, first of all, bad hair day. Oh, cleanse my hair. I haven't got a lot of it, and to make it look presentable, the best way to deal with it is to cut it all off, and I haven't got around to doing that, so it needs going over. So I'll put this on, keep you from being offended by my hair. But let's take a close look at this blade first of all, and I'm going to show you a way that anyone can use. I think it's possibly one of the easiest ways to sharpen a knife and get you that good edge back again. We'll take a close look at this blade, and we'll see what needs to be done, and I'll talk you through and show you how I'll bring this edge back. There's the knife, look, and you can just see the logo. And what's happened, the person that's had this knife, they've tried to sharpen it, and what they've done, let's see if I can get a better focus on the camera. What they've done when they've tried to sharpen it, they've hit the apex here, but they've put a secondary bevel on. Now, you can see it perhaps more there. In places it's sharp, or it's got an edge, a working edge, and in other places it's completely dull. So they've not maintained the bevel angle, and with a Scandinavian grind, this angle here, this is the set angle, this is your guide, so you've got to use that flat bevel as your guide, and it's one of the easiest grinds to sharpen when you know how to do it. And this method that I'm going to show you, anyone can do. All you need is a piece of corian. Corian is like a plastic, very, very hard plastic. So yeah, it's a very, very hard plastic. I bought a piece of corian, probably about 6 inches square, off of eBay for a few quid. And it's the thing is, it's very flat along there, and that's what you need, because your bevel wants to be flat, and so you need that flat edge to follow that bevel. And the other thing is, if you go online, you can buy cheap, you don't have to get expensive ones, obviously the more expensive ones you get the better, but you can get abrasive belts. Just do a Google search for abrasive belts. This is a P240 grit, and I'll start on a, if the blade really needed a lot of restoring, I'd start maybe on a 120, but I think this one I may be able to bring back by starting on a 220. A belt like this is about £3. and you want several belts of different grits, and the progression that I would do, go say from 240 to 400, or 240 to 320, then 400, 600, 1200, and if you wanted to mirror the bevel, then you could go on to 2000, 3000 and so on. So you're going to end up probably having to buy maybe sort of 4 or 5 belts, but once you've got those belts, they'll last you for many sharpenings, because most of the time, if you're just using the knife for its designed use, cutting wood, and you know, it'll just need regular stropping to maintain it. It won't need sort of resharpening, and most of the times I've had to resharpen knives, it's where someone's buggered them up through trying to sharpen them on stones or other devices, where they really didn't need to. So there's the Corian block. You can get hold of the belts, you can tear them as easy as that. And I go to the width of the block, tear it just a bit longer, it gives you a bit to fold over at the edges. So there's my flat block, there's my abrasive. There is, I've got to say, a clause to this way of sharpening, because if you're not aware of where your fingers are, you could run your fingers along a very sharp edge, so you've got to be very careful doing this. And in 10 years of knife making, I've never had a serious cut yet, but I'm always very conscious of where my fingers are with regard to that cutting edge. Anyway, I'll spin the camera around and show you what I'm going to do and how I'm going to hold the knife. So as you can see, there's absolutely no special tools required at all. I've just got, you want the thing they're going to hold the knife with. I'm using a magnet, and you want the magnet to be running towards you and away from you, because that's the motion that you're going to be doing your sharpening. And I've simply mounted it in a vise. Ideally, this isn't an ideal vise, because there is a little bit of flex to it. I've got this. It's one of those cheap hobby vices. This piece of wood here is what I use for my hand sanding. All the blades I've ever done have been hand sanded on that piece of wood there. But anyway, I've got this mounted on there. So if you had a more robust vise like that, then you could mount it into that. Just think a minute. Natural thinking here. No, there's just not quite enough width. The jaws don't come out quite wide enough, so I've mounted it in there like that. Ideally, if that swiveled, then I could have mounted it in that way, but the reason why I don't use that vise is because there's no room around here for me to get my sight line looking down that way, so I've got it mounted on there. Next thing to do is to put some tissue paper on there. That just stops the magnet from damaging the blade, and then we'll start work. So tissue paper on there just stops the magnet from scratching, and then mount the knife on there like that, making sure the edge is exposed. As I say, there are risks involved with this, so you've got to be very careful. And I'm simply going to just put a bit of oil on the blade, and then I rest that on the bevel angle. You can see you'll get a very positive lock as to when it does lock onto that bevel angle. It's there like that. You can feel it, and so using a little pressure, maintaining that angle, I'll just go to and fro. And the joy of this type of sharpening is that it's easy to maintain the angle, and secondly it removes the minimum amount of steel from the knife, so your knife is going to last a whole lot longer, and I think it's one of the easiest ways to maintain that bevel angle and restore your knife edge. So I'm going to go through the 220 grit on this side, then I'll flip the knife over, go through 220 on the other side, and then I'm looking to feel the burr. When I can feel that burr, I know I've sharpened enough, but that's going to be some time away. I've only been at it a few moments really. You can see, I don't know if the light's showing you the reflection on the flats there. You can see where the previous attempts by the owner to sharpen have sort of rolled right over here, so he had really poor control of maintaining bevel angle, and he was sharpening in that direction. But sharpening in this direction, it's so much easier to maintain that bevel angle, and you can see already the nice angle being restored. I've got a burr already after just a minute and a bit, 2 minutes of sharpening. I got a very strong burr there. I can feel my fingernail catching on it, but I've not got it in all places. I need to feel that burr in all places. And also, I think you can, on the unsharpened side of the bevel, you can see where the owner's tried to sharpen it, and it looks like he's used some kind of knife grinder on that, hand grinder or something, which is because I can see a definite secondary bevel, and that's not how you want to sharpen a Scandi if you want to keep it a true Scandi. So quite how much effort's going to be required to remove that, I don't know until I get round to it. But anyway, I'm going to continue working on this side so I get a good strong burr that I can feel on the opposite side, and then when I've done that, I'll flip it round and work on this side. As I say, just make sure that if you do this type of sharpening, you keep your hand away, your fingers away from that edge, because underneath there, let's just zoom out a sec, you can see my finger is exposed, so I'm making sure that I'm working with the finger well out of the way, going forwards and backwards, concentrating on certain areas where I need to get that burr to form, because it does remove steel very slowly. But already the grind is becoming nice and even, and it's by far, I think, the easiest method to sharpen a knife by hand using minimal equipment. Certainly that applies to a Scandinavian bevel anyway. If I just wipe the blade down, you'll see how well that bevel angle's been followed. I've just cleaned the blade off, but I'll show you. Put a bit of oil on it again, on the edge. Oil on the edge, and you'll see as I sharpen it, you'll see the oil turn black. That's actually some of the steel being removed. And also you can apply a fair bit of pressure once you get that angle right. There's the angle. You'll see the oil turn black up here as the steel's removed. It doesn't take long. And there you can see the steel, the blackness in the oil. Still got a way to go though. I've got a burr there. I don't have a burr right back here just yet. Well, this side on the first grit I finished now. I can feel a definite burr on the underside, so it's time to flip the knife round and do the other side. Knife sharpening, especially if you've got a handmade knife, I think it's a real essential skill for the owner to have. I think it's a mistake for if you can't sharpen your knife, then really you shouldn't have a knife. Sorry, it sounds a bit harsh, but I believe there's a truth in that. The other good thing with this swivel vice is that I can adjust the angle to put the bevel on a horizontal. Right, that'll do. Lock it off there. I have switched over to using mineral paraffin oil or baby oil, mineral oil. It seems to be better. Got some fresh abrasive, and again it's the same technique on this side. Sharpen away. Find the bevel angle 2 and 4 for a little bit of pressure. You can put a fair bit of pressure on. Just watch your fingers on that edge. Disclaimer, if you cut yourself using this method, then I cannot be held responsible. The potential for a nasty cut is there. You need to be aware of that. Yes, it's coming on. That secondary bevel that I could see that the owner had put on when he tried to sharpen it has almost been taken out already, just with those few passes. I'm working up through the grits now. Gone from 220 to 400 to 600. I'm just actually on 600 now. And you can see how easy it is. It's not a difficult process. The little block, the block forms its own level on that Scandinavian bevel. Level on the bevel, just like that. And backwards and forwards. Taking out, once you've got the burr formed, another bit of advice is don't move to the next finer grit up until you've actually got a burr formed. Then when you've got the burr formed, then you can move on to the next grit up, and then you simply just keep rubbing with the finer grit until you've removed all the scratches from the previous grit. And it doesn't take long when you get up to the finer grits. You know, if you're going to remove, say, 240 grit scratches, a 400 paper will remove that in just a minute or two, and then you can progress up to the next one, which is 600. Then if you want to go finer, you can go 1200, 2000, 3000. But for a knife which is going to be cutting wood, a little bit of coarseness to the edge is a good thing, because it helps sort of saw through the fibres. But having said that, when you sharpen in this direction, you're going to end up more of a linear edge. So if you do want a more toothy edge, then you can run the edge across a ceramic rod or something. That'll give you a bit more toothiness to the actual edge itself. I'm going to strop this knife now and see what we got. There's my strop, or one of my strops. Could do with a bit more compound on. Let's see if we've got a nice edge. If not, then obviously it's just back to the going through the papers again. You might have a flat spot, you'll see that reflecting, but I can't see any flat spots reflecting now. If I'd started off on a 120 grit paper, it would have speeded the process up. But in total, I've probably put about half to 3/4 of an hour hands-on into this edge, doing it by hand with very basic tools. As I say, I think it's really crucial for someone who has a knife, especially if it's a hand-built knife, to know how to sharpen it. And if you don't know how to sharpen it, then everybody can do this. It's not that some people can and some people can't. It's everybody can do it. It's just a matter of applying yourself and learning that necessary essential skill, because it goes hand in hand. Being able to maintain and sharpen the knife goes hand in hand with owning a knife, I believe. And if you can't sharpen a knife, then get yourself a cheap knife and just learn on that before you think about getting a custom built knife. Well, I've stropped the edge and I'm 90% there. I've got a good sharpness to this part of the blade, a good sharpness to this part of the blade, but here I've just got a slight dull. It's not quite as sharp. It's still sharp, but it's not quite there. So I'm just going to gently just work back and forth and then re-strop, and hopefully we'll have a good edge all along. It's important to make sure that you are hitting the whole of the edge and not either the back here or the apex. You want to be hitting the whole lot. And I've seen other videos where you can mark the bevel in with indelible ink, you know, from a marker pen, and that'll give you your telltale as to where you're removing metal. But I really am in the final stages now, getting this this edge there. So that's it. I've worked on the knife, gone through the grits, finally stropped it, happy with the edge, tested the edge. As you can see, it's an easy process, but you just got to be very careful that you get that angle right. And it just costs pennies, or just a few pounds, to get the necessary pieces of grit and a block of corian to be able to sharpen your knife. How sharp is it? Pretty sharp. And you can tell it's cutting with very little noise. So that's now a good sharp knife. And remember also, always strop on a board or a strop which has got a support behind it, never on a belt, because if you strop on a belt you will just convex your grind round over the edge. That's the sort of strop I mean, something that's got a backing behind it, and you want the leather to be quite thin. So in this case it's probably a 1/16 of an inch thick, 1/8 of an inch at the most. And also on your strop you want to be applying a proper compound. A compound like this will actually hone the edge, whereas if you use other things like silver water or polishes, although you're still removing some metal, you're more polishing the edge rather than honing. This will give a much more bitey, aggressive edge.